Welcome to the Rich Outdoors, where we break down the tips, tactics, and strategies of hunting's greats to not only help you become better hunters, but to motivate and inspire you between hunting adventures. For more about us, including additional resources on our guests and links to everything we cover in the interview, check out therichoutdoors.net. Hello, and welcome to another episode of the Rich Outdoors podcast. Today, we're chatting with a bit of an icon in the hunting community, and someone I look up to not only for her true hunting ability, but for her perspectives and her efforts within the industry. Jana Waller is not only the host of Skullbound TV, but is an active advocate of hunting rights and conservation. Jana truly understands what it means to be a hunter, and not only has some great tips that we could all take some notes on, but has more than a few good stories along the way. But first, a word from our sponsors. Today's show is brought to you by Powder River Cartridge. Powder River makes consumer direct, high quality, American-made ammunition. Check out www.powderrivercartridge.com, where you can order ammo that's delivered right to your door. With fast shipping and great customer service, you'll be at the range in no time. And be sure to enter coupon code RO to get 10% off your order. And now, on with the show. Hey Jana, welcome to the show. How are we doing today?
Hi, Cody. Great. Thanks for having me. I'm excited. Anytime I get the opportunity to chat with somebody as passionate about hunting as you are, it's a treat.
So how you guys been doing on your spring hunts? I see you doing a lot of bear hunting this spring. How we doing so far?
Well, it's been a successful hunt if you're like me and you gauge success differently. To me, success doesn't mean notching a tag. We haven't done that yet, but we have had some amazing encounters in the field, time well spent with some of our friends. We actually had two fellas here this last week, Grady Powell and Jared Ogden. They're both veterans. Jared is a former Navy SEAL. Grady is a former Green Beret, and they both were on the show. You may have heard of Nat Geo's Ultimate Survival Alaska. They're both from Team Military on that show, and they're friends of ours. And they came out here for 7 days of chasing bears in the Montana mountains. And even though they didn't notch their tags, they're coming back in September because your tags are still good in the fall. We had some incredible moments in the field. We actually saw 11 bears. We saw a sow with a single cub, a sow with twins, a sow with triplets, and then two singles. And we just couldn't get on the singles in time. They were kind of beelining it for the timber, and one was beelining it for the creek. But, that's a lot of interaction. And these are, two brand new bear hunters. They've had a lot of encounters with brown bears in Alaska or grizzlies, but never black bear hunting. So we had a lot of fun, a lot of laughs, and they're coming back in the fall. So it's been challenging as far as notching tags, but still a successful spring so far.
Yeah, bear hunting in general is one of those things where it's just an amazing creature to watch and so interesting. And to watch those little babies is something in itself, even if you don't get a tag or get your tag punched. But I absolutely love bear hunting and watching them as well.
Oh yeah, we filmed this sow with triplets, and it was some of the best bear footage Jim has ever captured. She was a huge cinnamon, and her cubs were pretty big. I'd say 2.5 years old, and one was just a blondie, and the other two were jet black. And we watched them nurse, we watched them wrestle, we watched them tackling flowers, and to me, that's what it's all about, is just being out in the great outdoors and experiencing things that you would never ever see if you weren't out there hunting.
Oh, absolutely. We were up turkey hunting this year, Scott Ellis and I, and we just sitting on this ridge, and here comes this bear walking up the hill, and we got to get footage of him, scratching his back on a tree, and it was one of the coolest things I've seen in a long time.
Yeah, that's fantastic.
So for the folks who kind of don't know your full background, why don't you give us a little bit about your hunting background and how you got started and how that all came about?
Sure. Well, when I was little, I grew up in the country, 8 miles outside of a small town called Fort Atkinson, Wisconsin, and just loved being outdoors. I'm one of two girls, and it's funny, my sister and I couldn't be more opposite. She is an amazing mom of three kids and has her talents as well, but has really no interest in hunting or fishing or the outdoors. And it's funny how we grew up in the same household, so different. Part of it, I think, is that my dad had a second daughter, kind of wanting a son and almost encouraging more of that boy behavior, if you will, for lack of a better phrase. But he also saw in me just this passion for nature. And to me, that's the core of hunting. And so when I was old enough to walk the pheasant fields of Wisconsin without complaining a whole lot, he would let me tag along. And we sat in the goose blinds and the duck blinds together before I even hunted myself. And that was my first introduction to it. And I think it's a great way to get people involved, letting them shadow the hunter. And then when I was 12 years old, I went through hunter safety, and we took a couple of pheasant hunting trips to South Dakota in my junior high days. And then I didn't really become a big game hunter till college. And I'm proud and embarrassed at the same time to say that was 24 years ago when I was a freshman. So I had, in high school, my dad started to get into whitetail hunting in Wisconsin. And I would sit in the trees with him just to experience nature. And then when I was a freshman, I was at a friend's apartment and I met a gal who was a couple years older than I was, but she was a bow hunter. And that was my first introduction to a female bow hunter. And I remember seriously walking away from that conversation and thinking, if she can do it, I could do it. Like, why don't I just get into it? And I bought my first bow my freshman year and started hunting when I was 19, 20. Got a doe my first season, and I was hooked. I was absolutely thrilled about everything that hunting taught me. You know, patience, persistence, pushing yourself through, cold weather that might be uncomfortable and getting up in those early hours, and everything from the beginning of scouting to, tracking and tagging and field dressing. And, there's something so rewarding about putting meat in the freezer that you harvested. And so that was coming up on 24 years ago that I got my first doe, and been really, really blessed to hunt the world in the last probably decade of my life.
Now, I know a lot of people, whether male or female, they have a hard time getting started in hunting, and if they don't find that early success. I mean, it can be hard with the difficulties or the slumps of hunting and kind of getting through that first success. And a lot of people give up on hunting before they ever find that same thing you're talking about, and that hook, line, and sinker. This is what I want. What advice do you have to people kind of getting into it that may be in that slump? Like, hey, I haven't had the success. I haven't found that hook yet.
Yeah. Well, my advice for all new hunters, whether they're kids or adults, is to appreciate the whole process. I think sometimes, people watch hunting shows and they get so fixated on how big is your buck? How big is that bull elk? What did your bear weigh? And to me, those are all great things, but it's just a small part of the hunt. I think people really need to focus on the whole entire process. And, if they're new to hunting, go along with somebody to experience what sign are you looking for? How do you scout? How do you track? Learn about the behaviors, whether it's whitetail or elk or any other species. Learn their behaviors. Appreciate the whole process. Even after the trigger has been pulled or that release has been, pulled, the whole process of how to field dress the game, how to cook the meat, and then I take it to another level with my skull business of, I decorate the skulls and create memories of, with unique pieces of art that is so much fun. But my advice to people starting out would be to just appreciate the entire process and the things you get to experience and witness along the way, and it'll make your whole hunt so much more enjoyable.
Oh, absolutely. And I think a lot of us find that's the true success in it all is the work and the things that we put into it and the effort and everything that goes in around it. What were some of your early influences when you first got started?
That's a great question, because back in the day, we're talking over 20 years ago, there weren't a lot of females, in the world of hunting. I remember seeing Brenda Valentine on a show and was inspired by her. She's, the first, we call her the first lady of hunting. She's a pioneer. She paved the way for a lot of us women. But really, my influences most directly came from my dad. There was a time when I was a freshman and I was contemplating, getting into hunting and should I pick up my own bow? Well, my dad had only been bow hunting one year previous. And I was at UW Whitewater, a college which is right next to the town where I grew up. And I got a phone call from my dad that said, I shot a buck. Do you want to help me look for it? And I said, absolutely. And so I went home and I got my boots and gear ready and we went down the road. He had asked permission on this guy's property just down the road from where I grew up in the country. And he showed me his stand. He showed me where the deer was. He had tracked it. This was the next day. He had tracked it that whole evening, lost blood, and we were back in there the next day. And this buck had ran into a cornfield. And, we picked up its tracks, and I was actually in the lead because there were a lot of deer tracks. I was on the tracks I thought this buck was on, and suddenly I could tell that they were dragging and they looked different. And sure enough, a couple rows up ahead was my dad's buck. And I yelled, buck, buck, and he came running over. And I can honestly say I had never seen my dad more excited than that moment. And I remember thinking, I've got to figure out, I want to feel that. I want to experience that myself. And that was the same year I bought my first bow 23, 24 years ago. And so a lot of my influence does come from my dad.
Yeah, and anytime you can see someone who just truly is passionate about it, that's a huge help. And that's kind of one of the big drivers that I've always had, is just watching other people that were so passionate about what they do, and it just makes you want to experience those same things.
Yes, exactly. Amen.
Now, the industry has grown, and there's a lot of women in the industry now, and a lot of that's because of people like you, and they have someone to look up to. How do you think that's changed over the years from, say, when you started till now, and how have you seen that evolve?
Oh, it's been incredible in the last, I'd say, 5 or 6 years. When I got into hunting, there really weren't a lot of women. I remember seeing Brenda Valentine, but besides that, there weren't. I didn't have any hunting networks growing up on our television. My dad always had a lot of hunting magazines laying around the house. I can't ever remember seeing even a woman in any of the articles. So that has changed dramatically in the last decade. And then in the last 5 or 6 years, definitely on TV. When I started Skullbound, we're now filming our 5th season. But when I started, I was the only solo female hosted show on the network. And now there are 2 other solo female hosted shows that I know of, and a lot of multi-female hosted shows as well. And it's a beautiful thing to see because, it's able to reach, I think Sportsman's Channel is in over 40 million households, and you're able to reach such a huge amount of people. And when they see strong, confident, powerful women of all ages, finding something that connects them to their food, connects them to the planet, and connects them to other people, it's an amazing process. And it's really exciting to see the hunting industry now starting to actually cater to the woman.
Oh, absolutely. And it's great to see it grow in a different way. And it helps the entire industry as a whole and helps us conserve those rights because you're growing such a much bigger audience. And then, like you said, there's people like you who others can look up to and say, well, if she can do it, I can do it. And things like that, the same way that you got into it. Right.
And it's so important. One of my missions in this whole evolutionary process of Skullbound TV and some other projects I'm working on, one of our missions is to pass along this passion, to talk more in-depthly about really what hunting is and how we can protect it. I don't think a lot of people understand the forces that are going on sort of behind the scenes to try and take away our hunting rights and privileges. And, groups like the United States Sportsmen's Alliance and Safari Club International Foundation and Rocky Mountain Elk and, all of those groups, and National Wild Turkey Federation, Mule Deer Foundation. I belong to 7 conservation groups, and they all take part in not only, working hard for the herds and the habitat and the flocks, but also behind the scenes in the courtrooms, because there's a lot of anti-hunters and anti-gunners trying to take away our rights. So I think it's really important to get the message across of what hunting means to us personally, what it means to our country and our society, and what it means as far as wildlife ecology and management. And we all need to band together to protect that.
A lot of people kind of just assume that other people are taking care of that. And I think it's all of our responsibility to stand up and be a part of that. But what do you consider, or what do you think is one of the biggest problems in the industry and with that issue in general?
I think one of the biggest problems is that we are not marketing ourselves right. And as weird as that sounds, it may be a weird concept, because I truly never thought of it either until I was into the hunting industry. But, we hunters, we need to remember that non-hunters and anti-hunters have no experience to draw from, and they make their conclusions out of sheer emotion and no science and education behind it. We've got to remember that, we are only 10% of our country. And it's scary, because I don't know about you, Cody, but all my friends are hunters, or most of them, and, my family, and I came from a hunting background. So to me, it's normal. But really, the United States Census Bureau does a study every 5 years, and it's really interesting data you can find online. But really, we're only 10% of the population. And unfortunately, there's another 10% that are strictly anti-hunting. They don't believe in any kind of hunting whatsoever, and they're mostly the animal rights groups. What we need to do is focus on that 80%, the non-hunters, the people who may not have ever been introduced to hunting, who don't understand what it's all about. And I think that's a thing that we're all conscious of, like as far as my work with the conservation groups and USSA, is that we're trying really hard to find out ways to better brand ourselves as marketers. For example, if you watch some Hollywood movies, we're often portrayed as the beer guzzling, wife beater tank top, sitting in the pickup truck, shooting out of it, and that does nobody any service. That's such a wrong portrayal of really what hunting is all about. On the other hand, there can be movies that come out like The Hunger Games, where a lot of young women have been inspired by Katniss to pick up a bow. And that's a beautiful thing. But we need, as hunters, to remember to always stand tall on social media against the antis. They more so than not, they'll use cruel, vile language. I get it every day. I got one this morning on Twitter calling me every name under the sun. And instead of lashing back at them, most of them aren't interested in a conversation. I would ban and delete them. It's important for us, I think, to reach those that are not anti, but are maybe non-hunters. But it's also important for us as hunters to band together, to not attack one another, not be rude to one another on social media, but support one another and lift each other up.
Yeah, some of our biggest problems can be the internal battles within ourselves. And like you said, you have to be the bigger person with the anti-hunting crowd. But I really like the point you made about marketing. And I do think that's very accurate, that the portrayal of a hunter and what it used to be, like you said, years ago, was kind of that beer guzzling, shoot 'em from the pickup, redneck hillbilly, and all the things in between. And I think that it's important that we all try to market ourselves and put their best foot forward to be the conservationists and to help people understand that that's what it's about.
Right. And it's definitely not going to happen overnight. It's really nice to see shows on primetime networks like Life Below Zero, for example. I think it's History or Nat Geo. Those are people who live off the land. Those are people where hunting is a sustainable part of their lives that they live off of. That is some of the only hunting some people will ever see. And it's done, I think, in a very well portrayed manner. There's a lot of shows on Sportsman's Channel and Outdoor Channel that I think portray hunters as very reverent and respectful. And, even, we do shows all the time where we don't even notch a tag. It's not about that. It's about showing the entire process. And, it's important for people to remember on social media that other eyes are watching. We need to always remember to take the high road, make sure that all of our pictures are respectful from the field, but also to support one another. I think sometimes it can turn into a competitive type thing. And there's nothing I hate more than that. Mm-hmm. When I see hunters getting in a competitive, negative mode, I don't like that at all. We need to just celebrate each other's success and, band together.
Yeah. What do you see as the best way forward, or what do you see that we are doing right and maybe what we're doing wrong with as we move forward with this battle against anti-hunting?
I see, I refuse to be negative on social media. I might use humor once in a while to show an example of the kind of uneducated, rude comments I get. I recently got one where, I can't even say it without laughing. A guy on a picture of me and my buddy Travis Prefert were with a big hog I shot in Texas. And as most of us hunters know, the hog issue is nothing to laugh at. It is it's a tragedy. I mean, it's an infestation that the South has to worry about, and every state's going to have to worry about if we don't figure out a better way to manage the explosive invasion of the wild hogs. In fact, I was on even an Animal Planet special co-hosting it about the problems. So, when I see people posting pictures of, wild hogs, I think, hooray, keep going, keep at it. But anyway, on this picture, a guy I believe he was tracked down by a friend of mine. He was from Chile or, a South American country. And he said, he first called me a bleeping murderer. How dare you, on and on. He called me gay, which I found weird. He called me stupid gay killer. Went on to say that, he called me 1,000 trashy B word in Spanish that I had to get translated. And then at the end, he said, I hope that bear eats your male genitalia and your children. So I had to use that one as an example because it's one of the funniest ones I've ever gotten, because this guy just was letting his emotions get the best of him. And so I, point by point, went through his attack, and I used it as a humorous point. Mm. And I think that's okay. I mean, but you don't ever want to get into a negative debate. Most of them have no interest in hearing what you have to say. I will debate somebody on social media who has a legitimate question, like, why did you kill that mountain lion? I thought they were endangered. That came from a place of a legitimate question. And I'd go back and forth with the person, educating them that, no, in fact, I live in the Bitterroot Valley. We have way too many lions. It's predator management. They do an incredible amount of damage on the ungulate population here. But it's rare to have that kind of dialogue back and forth with someone who isn't really fond of what you're doing. But I just think it's important to take the high road. I think it's important that we start to include in our television shows and our social media all aspects of the hunt, of what it truly means, and maybe not just the trophy pictures, but what did it take to get there? How many days did you have in the field? What were your challenges? Maybe more pictures of everybody eating the food that that hunt blessed them with, that kind of thing. I think the more we do that and the more exposure we will get in a positive light, the better off it can be.
At times it can seem very almost impossible to have this conversation because it's not even a conversation. It's very one-sided, and a lot of people let emotions get the best of them on either side of the fence. And I think you need to take that out and be logical. But like you said, it's marketing our best side, and that needs to happen a lot more. And so we educate the future, and maybe right now, maybe it's a lost cause. It sure seems like that at times, trying to make some of these arguments like you were talking about. But hopefully, down the road, that marketing pays off and people have a different understanding of what hunting is.
Right.
I also feel that the women hunters have seemed to get the hardest lash of insults and things. I'm curious what your thoughts on that are.
Yeah, it's funny. I was just talking about this exact same topic yesterday. I've been really honored to be asked to be part of Jason Matzinger's new project called Project Elk. It's a 1 hour documentary that's going to be airing on Sportsman's Channel and then hopefully in the future on a lot of major networks. And it's all about this exact topic. It's about marketing ourselves and telling the world what hunting truly means to us as individuals and to our landscape. To the food pantries, to the wildlife management. It goes deep, and it's going to be an amazing process and project. But it'll air, by the way, on Sportsman's Channel on August 15th. I'm super excited to be a part of it. But we talk about this topic, and it's funny. I truly believe women are more attacked because the antis look at women as a weak target. And that couldn't be any more farther from the truth, because the women that I know who are passionate about hunting are the strongest, most confident, most passionate people I know, and who are not going to take bullying from anybody. And so I think they look at women as the easier target, but they're barking up the wrong tree. But when asked for advice on how to handle it as a woman, it's what we talked about before. If they have a legitimate question, get into a conversation with them and educate them about why your picture is what it is or what the hunt really meant to you. But what I've had to learn over the course of Skullbound and the evolution of these last 5 years is I can't win everybody over. And I can't argue with them all, and I can't slam my point of view down their throat, just like they're not going to do a thing to me. And the ban and delete buttons are going to be your best friends on social media. And as much as you'd like to try to tell that person that their point of view is incorrect and wrong, and this is why, it's a lot easier just to ban, delete, get rid of that negativity. You don't need it, and move forward. And that was some good advice actually given to me by my friend Melissa Bachman, who's been, targeted tons by anti-hunters. And she said, I don't even argue with them and don't even report them. There's a lot of social media sites where you can report that you're getting harassed or bullied. Mm-hmm. But what Facebook, for example, does then is they'll shut your hunting page down because they feel they can't protect you. And these threats seem real and we can't do anything about them. So we feel we can't protect you, so we're shutting you down. Well, that's a terrible thing, and it happened to Melissa twice. So really the best advice is simply ban and delete anybody who's being crude or rude. Have hopefully an educational conversation with somebody who's got a legitimate question, but that's stand tall in knowing that we hunters are the ones giving back. We're the animal lovers of this world.
And I think actions speak louder than words in that case, and putting your best foot forward is really important. And it shows with the things that you do, and you're very well-rounded, working with different charities and donating to these, and the Wishes Foundation and the people you're working with. I know you've done a lot of charity stuff with donating your skulls and this artwork that you do. Can you tell us a little bit about your artwork and kind of how that got started?
Yeah, absolutely. So I 10 or 11 years ago, I started painting European mounts. How that got started, my dad came home from a trip to New Mexico and saw a painted ram skull in an art gallery. And he said, you got tons of skulls around the house. And we've always painted together just as both hobbyists. He said, you ought to paint some of your skulls. So I started doing that mostly in a Native American, dot design. And my friends really liked them. They started ordering them for their friends. And one thing led to another. The painting evolved into beading them. And then I just started donating them to some of my personal conservation groups. This was probably 7-8 years ago. And they did really well, raising great money at the conservation groups. So it just started as a hobby that turned into something way bigger than I ever expected. I launched a website where I used to sell my skulls, but unfortunately now with Skullbound TV and my donations, I can't keep up to have them on the website. But it's been really fun. It's fun knowing that I'm personally contributing. Like, I've raised over $31,000 with my artwork in the last decade. And that's one thing that really helps me stand tall as a hunter. When I always sign my pictures at, autograph sessions and stuff, I often sign at Stand Tall. And what that means is stand proud to know that even at the very least, the purchasing of hunting licenses, the purchasing of hunting gear and archery equipment from the Pittman-Robertson Act, all that goes towards, there's certain taxes, excise taxes within the purchase of hunting equipment that goes back into each state's wildlife management programs. That's something we need to stand tall about and proud about, much less the work the conservation groups do that are all hunter-based related conservation groups. We raise millions and millions of dollars every year through every group, and we're putting our money where our mouth is. We're benefiting the herds and the habitats, and because of us hunters, there are more elk today, more whitetail, more antelope, more ducks because of hunters. And I think we all need to stand tall and proud about what we do for animals, the habitat, herds, flocks, everything.
Yeah, hunters, everyone, at least everyone in our group or circles understands that, but I think that's something that goes unseen or unnoticed, or it's just one of those things that people are uneducated about, is how much that hunters provide to conservation.
Right, exactly. That's why we, even from the very get-go, the very first episode of Skullbound TV, we had a conservation minute. It kicks off the fourth segment of the show, and we've partnered up with some of the biggest names in conservation to get their messages out there. I totally agree with you. It's a missed message. It needs to get out there more of what we're actually doing. People can't understand that there are more animals because of hunters. It's a concept that is so foreign to them if they don't come from a hunting family. And it's important that we all market that we all educate ourselves on how much we're actually contributing back to the herds and the habitat and our heritage. And when you really dive into it, it's impressive. I just recently gave a talk at the Safari Club International banquet and rattled off a bunch of statistics from the United States Census Bureau, and it's impressive. It's billions of dollars every year raised by hunters that go right back into wildlife management.
Yeah, and you don't see a lot of anti-hunters putting that much money into anything for conservation.
Oh, they don't. It's just this year it was the United States Humane Society was outed. They got investigated by sort of the watchdog of nonprofits, and they found that less than 1% of their budget goes to animals. And that's pathetic. And now if you go online and you Google it, you'll see that there's a warning for people, do not donate to them, the HSUS. And a lot of it is marketing, like we've been talking about, of getting the word out that if you're an animal lover, well, then you should support conservation groups, because the hunting-based conservation groups are the ones that are reintroducing mountain goats to where they may not be anymore, increasing turkeys. The National Wild Turkey Federation is arguably one of the best success stories ever. Turkeys were at less than a million, I believe, back in the 40s. And now they believe there's over 8 million turkeys, nationwide. That's an amazing success story. And it's all because of hunters.
Exactly. And it's one of those things that, like you said, it's marketing. That's been going on with the Humane Society for years. And people still, if you just ask the lay person, they would have no clue that was going on. And it's the same thing you're talking about. They just have a reputation, and hunters have a reputation. And those are just two things that are really hard to redefine.
Right. I have absolutely supportive in our local Humane Society, but the local Humane Societies that do wonderful things for cats and dogs and domesticated animals they have no affiliation with the Humane Society of the United States, and that's where the confusion lies. But the HSUS, they're the groups that are animal rights activists sending out the Save the Wolf postcards. Mm-hmm. We all know what a joke that is. That's the kind of propaganda. They're the ones who put the commercials up on TV with the sad little puppies in the cage as Sarah McLachlan's playing in the background, all tugging at our heartstrings. And if people just did a little research of where that money goes, I think they'd be appalled. And if they do a little research on where our hunters' dollars go, they're going to stand tall.
Yeah, but a lot of people don't do the research, or they kind of just go off what's a known assumption, which kind of leads me into a quick question I have for you. If you were at a cocktail party and say it's not a hunting event and someone asked you, a non-hunter, not necessarily an anti, but a non-hunter, someone asked you what you do and who you are, how do you define that in a short answer?
Oh, that's funny. I get it all the time. I basically say that, well, I'm currently the host of a hunting adventure show that features conservation. That's my one-liner. And then they'll usually have a look on their face. And I explain to them that, well, I'm the host of a hunting show, but we strongly tie conservation into the show because, well, and I'll act like they should know this because, hunters, we're the ones who are truly the animal lovers. Now, sometimes I'll get another bewildered look and we'll get deeper into the conversation of conservation. But oftentimes people will just go, oh, that's really interesting. How did you get started into that? The most interesting conversation I ever had was I was on a plane heading to, I believe I was going to Minneapolis. And I sat next to an African-American professor from McGill. And he said, so what do you do? And again, I gave him my line and he looked at me really funny. And his first thing he said was, you're not one of those NRA gun-toting lovers, are you? And I said, in fact, I am. I belong to the National Rifle Association. And he rolled his eyes and we had a 2-hour conversation. He was from inner city Chicago. All he had ever grown up and witnessed and experienced were that guns were bad and that criminals and violent people owned guns. And I talked to him extensively about conservation and about, youth hunting and hunter safety. And, wouldn't it be amazing if a lot of those inner city kids got to experience the great outdoors through hunting and fishing? And he absolutely agreed on that. And I got an email from him the next day that said, I have to tell you, the conversation that we had has been spinning in my head all night long and all day long today. And I just want to thank you for giving me a different perspective I've never had before. That was one of the most rewarding emails I have ever gotten. And I think the point being, it just takes someone willing to have an open mind and listen if they come from sort of an anti or a non-hunter point of view. But we just have to talk from the heart because 99% of the hunters I know feel the same way I do, that it's not a hobby, it's a lifestyle and a passion.
Yeah, and it goes back to what we talked about and just seeing that passion within someone. And I truly believe that you don't have to be an expert in the politics of it all. But
right.
When you show that passion, and we all have it, that really comes out. And I think a lot of non-hunters can see that, and that can be worth a lot in itself.
Right. I agree. When people who haven't hunted hear stories of the healing power of Mother Nature and hunting, they're blown away. I know they are. I've witnessed it. When I say the healing power, I truly believe that. I've witnessed it. I've been really blessed to be able to take some veterans hunting this last season of Skullbound, and we're doing it a lot more this next season coming up. And I, for example, I took a double amputee Navy SEAL on his very first elk hunt. And I watched that warrior climb the Montana mountains for 7 days until he finally pulled the trigger on a bull. And watching him, battle the physical and mental, walls that he had to go through. And it was so inspiring for me. And I watched him transform from day 1 to day 7 of the hunt of I can do this. And it's almost like he went back to his Navy SEAL buds training and pushed through the physical strain of it all. And when he got that bull and was able to get up on that bull and wrap his hands around his bases, we all had tears in our eyes, and it was a moment I'll never forget. And that whole week was so healing for not only Bo, but for us who was along on the hunt. It was amazing. And I've had those kind of experiences multiple times this year. And I'm excited. I'm taking 2 veterans out from a group I'm really proud to be working with. It's called Wishes for Warriors. It's a group all about getting our veterans, our warriors, back into the woods and back on the water because there's major healing power there. And I'm super excited to sort of take Skullbound in that direction.
Yeah, we've been watching that, and it's amazing to see. And I think you're absolutely correct. And getting those folks out there and experiencing that, and whether it's re-experiencing it again or for the first time, either way, is very powerful and can have a huge effect on their life.
It really can. I took another amazing man, Greg Stubbe, 23-year Green Beret, big game hunter, but he had never been on a turkey hunt. And so Dave Melke, my buddy who is in charge of field operations for the NWTF, set up a turkey hunt with us. And we went to Kansas, and it was the most amazing turkey hunt I can even try to explain to people. In fact, if people want to go watch that episode, it's the only episode we have, full episode on Vimeo, if they want to see what Skullbound is all about. Just type in Skullbound Green Beret turkey hunt and they'll see it. But there was a moment there that I can't even talk about without getting choked up. We were sitting in the dark, and their turkeys were gobbling from the roosts all around us. As he stated, he's like, there were 2.3 million turkeys gobbling from the roost. And I leaned over towards him in the dark, and I whispered, "Hey, Greg, finally, it's a good thing to be surrounded." And he gave me a thumbs up. And later on that day, he actually got 2 birds with 1 shot. You know, he had 2 tags in his pocket. Kansas, you can get 2 birds. Got 2 birds, 1 shot. It was really awesome on a run and gun. And we were filming his exit interview, and he got really emotional. And he said, you know, first of all, let me say that Greg was in the Battle of Spurwin Gar. It was one of the most critical battles of the Afghan war. Went on for days on end. He was blown from his Humvee with a remote-controlled IED. He had a piece of shrapnel the size of a soda can blown through his torso. He was not expected to live, and not only live, but have a very active lifestyle. And so he's a true warrior in all the definitions of the word. And when he was giving that exit interview, he got really choked up, and he mentioned what I said to him in the woods. And he took a couple minutes to gather himself, and he said, never before since I came home from the war has all the weight of all that trauma been lifted off me like that. And it truly was great to be surrounded. I can't even talk about it, and that was over a year ago, without choking up, because it was an amazing moment that was on just a turkey hunt, regular old turkey hunt. And that was a moment Jim and I and Greg and Dave will share forever. And that's what I mean about the healing power of the hunt.
Wow, that's amazing. And that's, I think, our definition of a successful hunt.
Right.
What was your thoughts going into that project, and how did the outcome vary from what you kind of anticipated to how that really truly touched you? Well,
I'm doing a couple of different Wishes for Warriors projects coming up. The hunts I did with Bo Richenbeck, that was actually through a mutual friend, Jared Ogden, who I talked about earlier from Ultimate Survival Alaska. He has a foundation called the Phoenix Patriot Foundation. That's how I met Bo, the double amputee Navy SEAL, and went on that amazing hunt. That was set up through the Rocky Mountain Elk Foundation. But the hunts I have coming up are with Wishes for Warriors, another fantastic group that I'm really proud to represent. The beautiful thing about them is you never know what you're going to experience. That's half the reason we all love the hunt, is the unpredictability of it, the challenges they present, the bonding time. When you're with somebody 24/7 for a week, you can only bond. You talk about things that, you laugh, you talk about things that matter, you talk about, opening up and just really becoming close. And I think I know that bond for some of these warriors is exactly what they need. I'm taking Corey Garman, who is another double amputee, almost triple amputee with his left hand. We're taking him on an elk hunt in Utah this year. I'm so excited about. That's all set up through Wishes for Warriors. I'm taking another gentleman named Mike Krampitz, who is just the sweetest guy. I had the honor of meeting him in Florida. He was on his very first hunt. He'd never been hunting before. He was down there with Wishes. I happened to be down there with Jim visiting my dad, so we met up for dinner. That day, he had shot his first turkey. He was jacked out of his mind. He was so excited and explaining how they had to run and gun and chase this turkey down. And he had no idea that's what it was like. And the bond that he created with the guys he was with there, he later on followed up with that, an email to Brian, who's the founder of Wishes, and said, you know, it changed my life. You've given me a different perspective. I feel like I have a family with Wishes for Warriors. And Mike is just the sweetest guy, and I can't wait. We're taking him bow fishing in Kentucky in a month. And when I called him and told him, dude, come bow fishing with us, we're going to have such a good time, he was so excited. Well, I've never shot a bow before. How do I do it? I'm like, we'll teach you. AMS Bow Fishing has all the gear set up for you. You know, bow fishing is so much fun. It's a great way to get people introduced into archery. And we're just going to have a good time. But more so than anything, it's the bonding and the friendships and the memories that are created.
Yeah, it's the family that you create in this industry, I think, that is one of the most successful parts about hunting in general.
Amen. Yep, exactly.
So, Jana, I have to ask you, what would you consider yourself world-class at? This may be a tough question.
You know, I don't consider myself world-class at anything. If I'm being honest, I am just a passionate person in everything that I do. And what's that saying where, you know, you're good at you're not great at anything, but you're good at a lot. That's sort of me. You know, I've been an archer been a bow hunter for 23 years. I definitely don't claim to be the best bow hunter in the world. I've never even been to a competition. I don't target shoot like that. I shoot to make sure I'm proficient with my hunting equipment. But you know, at the same time, I love a good rifle hunt. You know, and that's something that Jim has introduced to me. Jim's a former Marine. He was an instructor for a bit on the range when he was a Marine, and he's really taught me precision long range rifle. Last summer, this is an interesting story. I was given the opportunity to go to a Nemo Arms class in Polson, Montana, and have become real close with the crowd at Nemo. They make an amazing long range rifle. They make a 300 Winchester short mag in an AR platform. And that thing is so fun to shoot. I can't even explain it to you. We were hitting clay pigeons that were hanging on lines at 1,000 yards on day one.
Wow.
Yeah, it's an amazing weapon.
Remind me not to go shooting with you.
Well, it's the instructors. I mean, so the Nemo instructors are Chance Gianelli and Jack Nevels. Both of them highly skilled. Both of them have over 20 years each experience as Green Berets and Special Forces. They're the best of the best. Chance Gianelli was international sniper champ in 2010. So you are learning from the best of the best. And it's just such a fun class. It's a 3-day class. They have a bunch of them coming up this summer, I think. But that has really improved my long distance rifle skills. And that's an important thing to bring up is when I see people online, hunters, sort of bashing each other. Maybe they're traditional archers and they're bashing long range rifle hunters or they're weapon specific hunters. Mm-hmm. I'm all for that. I love it when you have a passion for something. You know, I have a trad bow myself. I've never hunted with it, but I love to shoot it. It's a lot of fun. But I think we all need to band together. You don't have to publicly support somebody who maybe hunts in a different style that you do, but you sure don't need to bash them. And I think we just need to remember that we hunters are a family. We need to back each other up. We need to support one another. Maybe you're into something that I'm not into, but I think it's important not to attack one another and to stand tall together. I like it all. I'm looking forward to the next year. I'm going to do a mountain lion hunt with a handgun. I love it all, from archery to long range to handguns. I can't get enough of it all, but I certainly wouldn't claim I'm an expert at any of them.
Well, that's good to hear. And I think you're absolutely right with the bashing each other, whether it be fitness, whether it be what weapon you use. It doesn't matter. I mean, we're all out there for our own reasons. And whether you're just in it for the adventure of it all, or whether you're very passionate about one particular thing or one particular style, that's great. But let's not pick on each other. We don't need that. We have enough people against us.
Exactly. Let's not be haters. My friend Cameron Haynes, who I adore, I respect him on so many levels. He gets so many hater comments, and it's really funny because if you really look at them, they're all jealousy. They're, read between the lines. thinking Cam just walked into a wonderful hunting position in the industry. No, he built it up. He worked hard. And just like he's now into he's an incredible athlete, always has, doing the Bighorn 100 races and marathons. But now getting into weightlifting in the last few years, he's really bulked up, and he works really, really hard at it. And I've seen guys, who are haters on his page. And I think, what's the point? You're obviously a miserable person if you have to attack somebody else who's at a successful place in their lives. And I love that you brought up fitness, because fitness is a really big part of big game hunting, especially out west. We put in, we went to the game range the other day, and we were bear hunting / shed hunting, and we put over 10 miles on. That's a lot of hiking, a lot of hard work. You've got to train hard for that. And whether you're a hunter or just into fitness, or you mix the two of them, I think it's important that we all just support each other.
Yep. And you see it all the time, and people hate on different things, but everyone has their own interest, even outside of hunting. And if maybe you're into fitness, or you're into whatever it may be outside of hunting, it doesn't make you less of a hunter. And I think people need to find their own fitness in whatever they do. And, whether that be shed hunting 10 miles on the weekend, that's amazing. And you're going to get in incredible shape doing that a lot. And some people just don't have time, and there's just different facets for everything. And I think we just, like you said, need to respect each other for all that.
Amen. Yep, exactly.
So what do we have to look forward to coming up from Schoolbound TV?
Oh, I've got a couple of really exciting projects, exciting hunts for Skullbound. I'm heading out on Friday. I'm heading to Saskatchewan. We're going to the Wilderness Family Outfitters. You want to see some really cool bear pictures? Go on to the Wilderness Family Outfitters Facebook page. They have a couple of bears coming in that they look like they should be riding a unicycle in the circus. I mean, they're monster bears. And that's another, people seem to attack bait hunting a lot. And I think it comes from a position of not understanding how much work truly goes into baiting bears, for example. Now, I love chasing bears in the mountains here in Montana with my 300 Win Mag, running and gunning the hills. Usually the shots are 200, 300, 400 yards. I love that style of hunting bears, but I also love archery hunting bears as well. And what a lot of people don't understand, in the forests of Idaho, for example, or Saskatchewan or Alberta, they're super thick. Often you cannot see even 10, 15 yards in front of you. And their bears, they're overnumbered. They have way too many bears. And it's the only way to get bears centrally located and coming into certain spots. You can't run them and gun them in the mountains like you can here on all the open clear cuts of Montana. You've got to bait them, and it's the only way to manage their populations, much less it's wonderful eating. It's another misconception people don't understand. I see it all the time on Facebook. How could you kill something you don't eat? I'm a whitetail hunter, and I would never do that. And my first response is, what in the world makes you think we don't eat it? Bear meat is wonderful.
One of my favorites, actually.
Yeah, we take the back straps right away and usually eat them within 24 hours on the grill. And then we take all 4 quarters, smoke them, and then slice them up. And it's like the best smoked ham you've ever had. And it's just, again, a misconception that we need to continue getting out the positives of the hunt, the positives of predator management, the positives of eating mountain lion and bear and other predators. It just comes from constantly putting that out there or marketing it, as we talked about earlier. But so that's a hunt I'm really looking forward to with Wilderness Family Outfitters. Then I get back and I take Mike to Kentucky with AMS bow fishing. We're going to be bow fishing fatheads, which is going to be so much fun, and the flying carp that you often see on TV. That should be fun. I've actually never done that. I'm really looking forward to taking Corey Garman on his elk hunt in Utah as well. Oh, there's another really exciting hunt that I've never seen on TV before. I'm sure it's been on, but I don't get a chance to watch a whole lot of hunting programming. But I've been invited to go to Maryland on a Sika deer hunt. I didn't even know that this was a hunt available in the U.S.
Really?
So, no. Yeah, they're really cool looking. Make sure you Google them and look at the images. They look like itty-bitty deer with little itty-bitty horns. They're usually typically 6 points, 3x3, and they bugle like an elk. They bugle in sequences of 3. And it's going to be a fascinating hunt. I got to look into the history of it a little bit. I believe that they were not reintroduced per se, but maybe like the aoudad in New Mexico, they escaped from penned in areas, and they really thrived in the environment in Maryland. And it's one of the only places that it's free range, and yet you can hunt them. And I'm super excited to do that. That's in October. Oh, I'm hosting the Wyoming Women's Antelope Hunt put on by the state of Wyoming. And it's going to be fantastic. I've never been to this particular hunt before. They've got over anywhere between 30 and 40 women coming to the hunt. It's on a huge ranch. We all break up in the morning and do our own hunting, come back in the evenings and just share stories and, pass on fun stories of the past, and hopefully just continue to pass on the passion between us women. It's going to be so much fun. That is put on, like I said, through the state of Wyoming.
Is that something that people can still sign up for, or is that full, or do you know?
Don't think it's full. They can still go on. Just Google Wyoming Women's Antelope Hunt, and they should be able to gather some information about that. But that's sure going to be fun to be with that many women in a crowd, all passionate about the same thing. It's going to be a blast.
Oh, that sounds like a great experience. Sounds like you got a really busy year this year, and I'm excited to see all of it, and especially that hunt in Maryland. That looks really interesting. I'm going to have to do some research on that.
Yeah, I'm excited. It'll be I love going on a hunt I know nothing about. That to me is so much fun. I was invited a couple of years ago on my first aoudad hunt, and I'll never forget when Rusty Silva, my buddy, said, you ought to come to New Mexico and go aoudad hunting with me. And I was like, what? What's an aoudad? And it really is. There's a joke that it being the poor man's sheep hunt. Everybody knows that, chasing bighorns or, any other type of ram hunt is very costly. There's limited areas that you can go in. And for having an amazing experience like you can in New Mexico, it's all free range. Aoudad are incredible creatures with incredible eyesight. It was amazing. We'd be making a move on a small herd 500 yards away, and they would see us coming. It boom, they'd be over the hill, and it was so much fun. I would do that again in a heartbeat, time permitting, and that's what I love, going on a hunt that I know nothing about, and I get to experience it all through fresh eyes, and then hopefully share my stories to encourage other people to do the same thing.
It's the adventure of the unknown, right?
Yeah, it really is. And even though every hunt has that, every time we walk out our backyard and go elk hunting, you never know what you're going to see, what you're going to do. Are you going to pull that bow back? What's going to happen? There's the excitement in every time you step outdoors. But going on a hunt where you know nothing about the creature you're hunting, there's a fantastic element to that that's so exciting.
Wow, absolutely. Well, we're going to link to everything in the show notes, and we'll and link to your sites. Do you have anything that you want people to check out as well?
I'd love for people to check out Wishes for Warriors. They're a real legitimate group. Right now I think there's a surge of patriotism going on in this country. That's so great to see. It's a veterans and their causes are passionate to my heart, and Jim being a former Marine. They're a legitimate group. There are a lot of ones that aren't, unfortunately. It's really sad. They're using veterans for purposes of not really having the money and the funds and the purpose go back to them individually, whereas Wishes for Warriors is dollar in, dollar out. They're brand new. They've only been around a year and a half. And last year their goal was to get 4 guys back out into the woods and on the water, and they took 19 guys out. And they're just a fantastic group of guys, so check them out. Keep an eye open for Project Elk on Sportsman's Channel in August. It's going to be an amazing documentary that I think all hunters will be so proud of. I'm also going to be co-hosting a brand new show. I can't even talk about it yet, which is really hard for me. But I'll tell you what, when I can, I'll come back on. It's really exciting. There's nothing like it out there. They're not hunting related. I'll tease it like that.
Wow.
There's shows out there that are mainstream shows, but they're not hunting related at all. This is taking a mainstream concept and gearing it towards outdoor enthusiasts. And I'm really excited to be a part of it. And we've already filmed the sizzle. It's being pitched right now. And when I can talk more about it, I will definitely come back on and we'll chat.
We can't wait to hear about it. And I think that's kind of the trend these days, is kind of moving to shows that are more mainstream, which is good because it, like we said, it's marketing to that demographic that doesn't understand everything about hunting.
Right. I mean, even like I was on 2 years ago, that Animal Planet special, it was a 2-part series, 1 hour each, about invasive species. We did an episode about the wild hogs in Texas and Florida. And then we also did an episode about the Everglades and that what's happening on an ecological level with these invasive species and how they're impacting the environment. And it's fascinating. And I thought it was fantastic that Animal Planet, of all networks, opened up to that idea of showing hunters and hunting in a positive light and as a positive wildlife management tool. And, you know, if Animal Planet can do it, the others can too. And it's a beautiful thing. And hopefully we'll be seeing more of that.
Yeah. Do you think the networks are opening up more to that? I mean, we see Donnie Vincent getting the Discovery show. Do you think that larger networks are opening up more to a show that and kind of portrays us in a different light?
I do. I'm excited about it. I think Donnie does amazing work. I cannot wait to watch his new show. I think that, shows like I mentioned, Life Below Zero, and a lot of those Alaska-based shows show people living off the land and how much hard work it is to hunt and take care of that animal and process that animal and keep it fresh. And, the different aspects where maybe viewers haven't seen that before. I do see it. Shows like Duck Dynasty. Duck Dynasty shows a specific type of hunters without showing hunting. But I think it's been a wonderful thing because it shows what most of us believe in, and that is the passion of hunting, faith-based, standing up for what we believe is right. That's what Duck Dynasty represents, in my opinion, of standing up for family values and what they believe is right. And even though doesn't even revolve around hunting as much as it does the character footage in the show, it's a great introduction to people who may not have been introduced to passionate hunters before. So I think it's all a beautiful thing. And I do think it is happening more and more on a mainstream level, and it's exciting to watch.
Yeah, it's exciting to see what's going to be coming in the future. And we're excited to hear what you have in store for us. And even though you left us with quite the teaser, we'll have to have you back on when you can talk about it.
Okay, sounds good. Hopefully I'll be able to at the end of the summer. So I'll let you know and be able to chat more. But no, people can go on if they want to see what Jim and I are up to. We're, like I said to you earlier, we're literally a 2-man band. We get a lot of questions about how do you do it? Because we are a 2-man band. I'm sitting in our studio in our home right now. We literally produce our show start to finish, deliver it to the network from inside our little home. It is possible to be a 2 or 3-man band. If they want to see what we're up to, they can go to skullboundtv.com. I encourage people to check out our sponsors on that tab up top, because our sponsors are our family, and they're the ones that give us the opportunity to have this platform. And I can truly say that I don't represent anybody that I don't 100% believe in, and I feel really lucky to have the sponsors that we do. And if you're ever curious, if anyone's ever curious about the gear we use, feel free to send us a message. When they send a message through our website, we're a 2-man band. It goes to either Jim or I, and we're happy to answer any questions anybody might have.
Well, cool. Well, thanks for talking with us and sharing us with all your advice and all the nuggets of wisdom.
Anytime. I don't know how much wisdom there was in there. Not a whole lot of wisdom sometimes, but you do what you got to do. And I think it's important to just end on a note of saying we've maybe overly stressed this, but maybe that's not even true, but to just stand tall as hunters. We're all different kinds of hunters, but we need to stand and band together, support one another, and continue to teach other people about what our passion is really all about.
Yeah, standing tall and standing next to one another is very important.
Exactly. And I appreciate you in the podcast because you give me another outlet to talk about what I love. So thanks so much for having me on.
Yeah, we'll hope to have you on again.
Sounds great.
All righty, thank you so much.
Take care.
You too.
Thanks, bye.
Hey guys, thanks for listening, and we hope you enjoyed the show and maybe even picked up a few tips along the way. Join us right here every Thursday morning for more interviews and great hunting tips. And be sure to help us out by leaving a review on iTunes. For more information about this show and the rest of our guests, check out the show notes for links and additional resources on our website, www.therichoutdoors.net.